Ready?
I am.
I'm Monica.
I'm Candace.
We are Glass Over Teakettle.
And today we're going to be talking about how to prep your glass before you cut it.
Yeah, we've been promising cutting soon, but what else have we already done videos about for the process?
We've done sketching.
Yeah.
And we've done glass selection.
Yeah.
And so now we're just going to keep teasing cutting.
Cutting is next, I swear, but today's it's an important step. And we do this step pretty fast now that we're so experienced, but when we first started out, this was a really important step that we spend a lot of time on. So we're going to do that today. What are we doing?
Today we are putting our pattern, tracing our pattern onto our glass. So we created a pattern and we're going to link it in the description below. If you want to print it out and follow along, you can make the pattern with us.
Ooh.
We're going to be making a horizon. It can be a horizon wherever you want it to be.
Yeah.
And if you want to join us, please do. Let's go.
Okay, so we're at our workstation. Like we said, today we're prepping glass with our pattern. This is our pattern. And there's more than one technique to make this happen. But when we first learned, it's important after you draw your pattern to number each piece. We first learned, and it helped us when we were new, is to simply cut out your pattern. Some people use special scissors that are for pattern cutting, which I have tried them, but I didn't see a real big difference in my work. Maybe you did when you did a leaded piece, right?
I think pattern scissors are a little more necessary if you are doing a leaded piece, where you're actually using stretched lead instead of soldering the piece together with the Tiffany copper foil method, which is what this is.
Yeah.
You have a little bit more room for error, and you're going to be doing a little bit more grinding with this method anyway. So I don't think pattern scissors are necessary for this technique.
One of the reasons why we picked this pattern is because all the pieces have a curve and a straight line, which is great for getting your practice in when you're new. But anyway, once you've cut your pattern, keep your pieces off to the side. You will be using these in certain situations, which we'll explain in a minute. There's more than one way to prep your glass for cutting, but this is one way that is really helpful if you're new. It's also really helpful if you're using opaque glass. Okay, so we've cut out our pattern pieces, which will be really helpful in just a minute. We've already selected our glass, and like we talked about in our glass selection video, we have checked both sides to make sure we know what's happening and on both sides. We have cleaned it. We use ammonia-free glass cleaner. We always clean our glass before cutting. Why do we do that?
Sometimes there's dirt on the glass. Sometimes there's oils on the glass that you don't want to be tracing on or trying to cut on, because it'll affect how your cutter works and how your marker works. So we just try to make sure all pieces of glass are clean before we use them.
Yeah. Cool. So what did you pick for your son?
So for my son, I chose this orange glass with a darker orange woven in.
Pretty.
Yeah, it's a nice color.
Glad to see you using your safety glove.
Yeah. Sorry.
We always put on our left hand.
What I meant to say was I chose orange.
Yeah. We can't have the gloves on both hands because we need our marker hand to be free, but we try to pick up glass with our gloved hand.
So for my son, I chose this orange that I should be holding with this hand. And on all pieces of glass, there's going to be a side like this that's nice and smooth. This one's glossy. And then this side's a little bit rougher and kind of has some grit to it almost. That smoother side, that's going to be the side you want to cut on. So you're going to want to trace on that side as well.
That's right.
So for tracing my son, I don't even need to turn the light box on because this glass is so transparent. So I'm just going to line up my orange glass. I'm going to use the straight edge that's already there.
Yep, you can see the pattern through. So you're using that straight edge.
Yep. So that way the only cut I have to make is that arch. I'm not having to make 2 cuts, one for the straight line and one for the arch. So I'm just gonna set it there, and I trace right on top of the glass, right number 8. You wanna write the number on it so that once you get the pieces moved around, you know which is which. And there's my sun. I'll cut that out when we get to cutting.
Nice. Yeah, definitely write your numbers. So I chose a glass for my sun that is iridescent. It has some rainbow magic. I know I want to use that smoother side for cutting, but this glass is opaque. So the technique that Candace used of tracing right onto the pattern, that won't work for opaque glass, which is why it's helpful to have cut out your pattern, because then I can take the pattern piece that I want and put it right on top of my glass on the cut side, the smooth side, and figure out what angle, what direction, what colors I want to show. I already know I want this yellowy end. So my technique is to put the pattern right on top of the glass. Now, when we were new at stained glass, we would take the time with a glue stick and we would glue all of our pattern pieces to all of the glass that we wanted to cut. That's fine, you can do that. It's time consuming, but you do get accurate cuts. So I'm gonna hold my pattern piece instead of gluing, and I'm gonna trace number 8, my sun. I couldn't use the light box because this is opaque. And I'm gonna number it. On this pattern, it's very obvious what shape this is, but when you get going with stained glass and your pattern pieces are more intricate, don't forget to number. That's been a fun puzzle to try to figure out. So I knew I wanted that direction. I knew that was my smooth side, and now I have my sun ready to cut. What did you pick for water?
So for my choice for water, we're going to talk about it because it's a texture. So I'll use my gloved hand and pick this up. This blue that I chose for water has a very, very intense texture to it. It's very bumpy.
Yeah, like pebbly. See in the light?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to try to cut on that side because it's not going to go well. So for a piece of textured glass like this, you have to kind of flip your mind and get it to work backwards. So I'm going to take this textured glass and I'm going to flip it so that the smooth side is up, because when I cut it, I want this texture on the front. So I'm going to smooth side up, and then I'm going to take my pattern, this is for piece number 9, and I'm going to flip my pattern so that it's backwards, upside down. I'll turn the light box on, set this on, and then I'm going to trace number 9
with silver.
With
right?
silver, because if you traced blue glass with black Sharpie, you'd have no idea where your line was.
So just to reiterate, Candace flipped her pattern and flipped the glass because she wants the bumpy textured side on the front.
So I've now, on the smooth side, traced number 9, written number 9, and I'm going to cut on that side. Once that piece is cut out, it'll flip and the texture will be on the correct side. With a piece like this, that shape is reversible no matter what, so it's not really necessary to trace this piece backward. However, if it were a piece like one of these rays that has one shorter straight side and one longer straight side, if you didn't trace that backwards, it would cause you issues and you'd have to retrace and recut it.
Or you'd have to have your pattern facing the back, which isn't always ideal. You picked a patterned glass for your sun rays that not only is patterned, but it also has iridescent and it's directional. So this is a tricky piece of glass to pick. I don't know if you guys can see this.
Yeah, that has some intense
lines.
texture.
There's lines that matter. And we've talked about this in other videos, But if Candace didn't pay attention to the direction and her sunbeams went in all different, some horizontal, some vertical, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look cohesive to the eye. So directional glass is important to get right.
So what did you pick for water, Monica?
Well, Candace,
Tell us, please.
you went with that pretty dark blue. I went with something a little different, kind of a teal. I don't know. Can you see it in the light box? Maybe not. But anyway, the important thing to note is I checked both sides, and there is a pattern happening, kind of a swirly and a stripe. And I kind of played with it, like where I want it, where I want the water to end up on my pattern. And we do try to conserve glass and cut as close to edges as possible. But if I really like this current down the middle, I might cut that. This is what I picked. I want like a little white cap situation. So I'm actually going to pick right there. I don't need my light box. There is enough, hopefully this is on camera. There is enough light coming through this particular glass. And sometimes, if you're not confident in straight line freehand, we use a ruler right along my pattern line. I care very much that a horizon is nice and straight. And then I will freehand the curve. And just keep in mind the tracing, while important, you do cut along that line, and then you also grind to make it nice and smooth. So there's number 9 in the pattern is my water piece. So I have my water and my sun, and you have your water and your sun. When we do our sunbeams, maybe we can do it on video without much talking, because this might be too long of a video, and then come back at the end.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let's race. No.
Race?
No racing. Okay, so we both have 9 pieces that are traced out. We're going to be putting them on this pattern, and in our next video, we finally get to start cutting.
Yay! The time has come.
All right, so let's lean in and say goodbye. So I'm Monica.
I'm Candace.
And we're coming out with new videos every Wednesday, so be sure to like and subscribe, and I promise you next week we will be cutting.
Yeah, leave us a comment about your tracing techniques and how you get your patterns on your glass. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and if you want to follow along, make sure you check the description for the pattern that we've linked so you can join us in making a horizon.
We should shoot every video from this angle. This
Totally.
is not uncomfortable at all.
And it's flattering.
Woo!
Wow.
Bye, guys.
See you next week.